Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It is now 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, so we'll go ahead and kind of start with a poll as we allow others to filter in. This poll is just getting a better understanding of what kind of needs you have for facing sample management. We have searching for samples, freezer organization, tracing, sample lineage, workflow tracking, recording sample data and information, or if there's something else that you need, please feel free to put it in the chat. And as you're kind of filling in those polls, I'll kind of introduce myself. I'm Lance. I'm a product specialist here at LabKey. It's great to see everyone here today. My role here is to really help folks understand Sample Manager, understand if we're a good fit for them, and kind of act as a consultant to get you with the software that you need. Once we kind of go through all that process, I also help folks get onboarded with Sample Manager, make sure that we're helping to import any historical data that you might have, getting the software to meet your needs, and provide training for anyone that may need it. And then after that point, once you're all implemented and onboarded, I'm always here for customer support needs. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes for this poll. I see a few more folks have kind of joined in since then. Um, and if you have any questions in the chat before we kind of get started, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I'll try to get them as we go through this demo. I'll go ahead and share my screen while we're waiting. And I'll kind of stop the poll really fast then, see if we have any responses. All right, so right now it looks like we're looking for searching for samples, freezer organization, and then also some tracing sample lineage, workflow tracking, and recording sample data and information, which is all great. So I'll go ahead and kind of end that poll and we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll kind of keep those things in mind as we go through our demo. So I want to get you a little bit more background information on Sample Manager and like who we are as an organization as LabKey. So really today we're going to be talking about that as well as what to consider when looking for a sample management system, and then we'll dive into that demo. Really, when we're looking at a sample manager software, it's kind of important to understand the key requirements of what we're looking for. So with that poll kind of tracked some of those requirements that you need, but then you might also want to consider the structure of your lab. If you have multiple labs or departments that need to share information with each other, or if you need to partition that data. It's also important to consider the number of users you have and any special requirements those users may need if they need certain levels of access. And then what volume of samples are you working with and what types of samples are you working with? Can that software support that? And then we also want to consider how are you planning on capturing your data and importing it into the system? Do you want to do it through the software, through importing spreadsheets, or through an API? So that's something to kind of keep in mind. We are looking for freezer management, tracking aliquots and lineage, and ELN. Are you looking for compliance support? Are you looking for barcoding? Any other special features that you might need? And then we also want to look at the vendor. How does the vendor price their software? What kind of customer support do they offer? Does customer support included in that pricing model? Is there software updates, or do you buy what you get? And does the software support your growth? Are you able to grow into more functionality, add more users, upgrade to more tiers, or is there additional software that can support you? Having a better understanding of your use case can make sure that you're picking a software that's going to be more successful for your organization. So today we're going to be looking at how LabKey can kind of fit into these special needs and requirements. So as LabKey, who are we as a vendor? Really, you want to make sure you like who you're working with. So some background information is always good. LabKey started over 20 years ago as part of the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center here in Seattle, Washington of the United States. And we're experts in scientific data management. So we're scientists who have built the software and we're building it for scientists. I myself used to work in the lab, and a lot of our other folks here at LabKey have as well. So we kind of understand the pitfalls of different data capture management systems and how we can continue to improve on those. And not only that, but we also partner with all of our clients to make sure that we're building our software in a way that really reflects what their needs are with our monthly updates. And we partner with them very closely from academia to pharma and biotech and government research to make sure that they have all the support that they need. And so we can continue implementing their old data as well as any new projects that they're taking on. And we also want to take that feedback very seriously. So like I alluded before, we have monthly updates and we're continuously releasing those new features to help make sure you succeed. As we look more into Sample Manager, you'll see that there's three main pillars that we really focus on. And we usually have these related to those requirements from before. One of those requirements is usually data integrity and data capture. We want to make sure that we're capturing the data that you need associated with your samples, your freezers, your sources. And we want to make sure that it's accurate. We have different data fields to make sure that we're entering in data correctly. And then we also have a very robust audit log, which can lead into more sample traceability as well. Not only that, but we can also track exactly where your samples are in storage. We can track exactly where they came from. Maybe we need to know what samples came from which patients, or if we have any aliquots or derivatives. And we can also track where these samples are in their life cycle. If they're available, if they're locked for a quality control test, we can do that for you. Then there's our system flexibility, and that's something that really sets us apart. We want to make sure that Sample Manager adapts to the way that you work. You don't have to adapt the way you work to the software. So today we're going to be looking at a system that's set up more for clinical sample management, but there's also going to be a variety of sample types we can support, such as dirt, or rocks, or blood, or plants. And we can have as many different data fields associated with these samples to make sure we're capturing everything that you need. And then there's two different tiers of Sample Manager, and we're going to be focusing more on our starter tier. So this is going to be our freezer management, our sample lineage tracking, querying, reporting, and our full audit log. But we also have something like an assay data management, an ELN, workflow management, data partitioning, and Promatic tools with API access. And after this, if you say, hey, I want to see those professional features, more than happy to schedule another time to kind of go more in depth of what those features are. So if you have any questions as I kind of go into our demo of Sample Manager, please feel free to kind of chime them in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to kind of go over them. But now it's the exciting part. We actually get to see the software. So this is my instance of Sample Manager. It's going to look very similar to what your instance may look like. It'll just be a little bit different depending on the types of samples we're really capturing. Here I can see I have my blood sample types, my DNA samples. I can see their different statuses. So here I can see I have around 10,000 DNA samples that are available, and I have around 19,000 DNA samples that have been consumed. These are all configurable based off of what our workflows kind of look like in Sample Manager. I have a list of all my different storage units, so I can see exactly where these storage units are, so I don't have to go from room to room trying to find the right freezer. And I can also see the breakdown of samples within each of these storage units, as well as the space that I have available. So if I kind of click on this, I can get some more detail on the different shelves that are available and kind of further narrow it down, and it kind of helps us when we're checking in that information. Going back to my home page, I can also see these workflow tasks that have been assigned to me. These, when I get these, I get an email notification. This is part of our professional tier. We also have a list of our recently opened electronic lab notebooks, so I can go back and see what experiments I'm working on and those notes associated with them. That's also part of our professional tier. To navigate throughout Sample Manager, we make this super easy for any of your users. We have our dashboard here, so I can see the exact source types I have, like labs, mice, studies, patients, what have you. I have my different sample types, like blood, DNA, PBMC, my assays, my storage and workflows, as well as specific projects that I'm partitioning my data through. These are all configurable, so we can set up whatever naming patterns you need for these sorts of fields. Let's go ahead and look at what our samples look like in Sample Manager. So I clicked on my blood sample type, and this is going to bring me up a grid of all of my different blood samples that I have here. This is kind of great, so I can filter through all of these different fields. So I can see all of my samples that have failed a quality control test. It's going to bring up these two samples that did that. Whenever you see one of these grids throughout Sample Manager 2, you can select whichever samples you want to work on, or you can select all of them and download them into a CSV, Excel, or TSV file. That way I can share this information with others in my organization. These views are also customizable, so if I want to see certain sets of data at once, I can definitely save that as a new view and go back and forth just to make it much more streamlined in what kind of information I'm seeing. From these grids, I can add samples to storage. I can create derivatives or aliquots. I can add assays to these samples. So we really want to make sure this is as easy to use as possible for any of our users. Right now, let's go ahead and go into a specific sample so we can get some more information on it. I'm looking at blood 4733. This sample has a lot of information related to it, so I like to show it in my demos. I can see exactly where the sample is in storage. This is something I could also see in that grid view. I can see how many aliquots have been created from the sample, as well as how many of them are available, what notebooks the sample is associated with, and all of the metadata that's assigned to the specific sample. One thing that really sets us apart and really gets folks excited is being able to track the lineage of samples. So this is where I can see the relationship the sample has with everything else in my laboratory. I can see that the sample has these 11 aliquots and it has these 3 derivatives. I can then see the samples that came off of those child samples. But I can also see that this sample was taken from this specific mouse and that this specific mouse is part of this study. I can also see that the sample was collected at this laboratory. So this really helps to kind of showcase how we're connecting relationships with these samples. And these are automatically generated when we select which samples these came from. If I want to get some more information on a specific source, like my mouse or a patient, I can see all the samples that this mouse has. And you can imagine if you have a lot of samples under a specific study, this might not be so much of a useful view, but we do have our samples tab here. So it's going to pull up a list of all of my samples that are related to this specific mouse. So this is kind of a great way for me to get some more in-depth information on what's happening with my studies or my specific patients. Going back to blood 4733, I can see all of the assays the sample's been associated with, as well as their test results. These are things that I can set up to make sure we're capturing the correct results. I can see what workflow jobs the sample has been assigned with and check on the status of these workflow jobs. And something that I think really makes our system very user-friendly is our sample-centric audit log. So this is very unique to Sample Manager. I can go into a specific sample if I'm having quality issues, see what's happened to the sample, who's worked on it, what did they do and why. And you can see that we capture everything from the moment the sample is registered all the way to when we consume it. This includes timestamps, the user that did it, and we also show what's changed or what's been done to it right here in the event details. Even after you consume a sample, it's no longer in your system. We hold on to this view so you can go back to it at a later point in time. Most other systems would delete something that is very similar to this. And then we also have a system-wide audit trail that shows all of your samples out at once. So you can kind of go into more information here. But let's go into freezer management, which I think is usually what folks kind of come to us for when they're looking at a new sample management system. They want to make sure that they have very great visuals when they're looking at where their samples are in storage, make sure that the system can customize the types of boxes or freezers they're working with, and that it's easy to check samples in and out. So with Sample Manager, I just clicked on Blood 4733's exact location. It's going to highlight the row and the column it's located in. And I can also see all of the other samples that are in this specific box. We can see that our red dot is for our blood samples and our blue dots are for a DNA sample. So we do color code your sample types. And from this box view, I can also have all the metadata associated with this specific sample, so I don't have to go back and forth between screens. And that we have another grid view for all of the samples located in this box. So if I'm shipping one box out to another location, I can very easily download this box manifests and share it with folks that may need it. From this screen, I can also select multiple samples at once if I'm checking in or out samples from a specific row, or I can do one sample at a time. So let's go ahead and check out blood 4733. When we do it, just keep note that we have a 2 milliliters remaining of the sample and a 6 freeze thaw count. That's going to come in play in just a second. So when I check it out, it's going to ask me why I'm doing it. This is going to be tracked in my audit log. I'll go ahead and check out the specific sample. When I do that, I can see that this slot is highlighted pink, which means it's reserved. We're assuming you're wanting to put your sample back in when you're done checking it out, so we won't let anyone else check into that location. If you want to free up that space, you just move it to somewhere like a workbench. Now that I'm checking in my sample, it's going to ask us how much we used during our experiment. So let's just say I used 1 ml. It's going to ask us to increment our freeze thaw count. And then I'm gonna just save for my demo, and this is gonna all be tracked in my audit log. When I check it back in, I can see that we automatically reduced the amount we have available of the sample and that we automatically increased our freeze thaw count. That way we can keep real-time check of what's going on in the system. Great, so no questions yet. And if you have any questions kind of as I go through this, please feel free to chime in. All of these boxes and freezers are customizable, so you can have an 8x4 box, 10x10, 9x9, or they could be racks, however you want to kind of name these samples. We can have as many different shelves, drawers, racks inside of these freezers as well, so it matches what your reality is. So this is kind of the basics of our freezers. They're very easy to kind of get set up, and that's something we can help you do as well. One thing that I also think is very useful for organizations is finding their samples, right? You have your samples checked in. Now you need to find a way to query that data and be able to find it. And this is from my experience where it's very difficult to find specific samples in a LIMS. And this is where I think Sample Manager really excels in. One way we have this is through our sample finder tool. So if I want to find all my samples, let's say from a mice with a bulb C strain, I can select this and it's going to search through my entire database and pull a list of all of the samples that meet that criteria. I can further narrow it down to say, maybe I just want to find all my blood samples that meet that criteria, and it's going to pull a list that meets that. So this is a great way to kind of further have more information on your samples and find exactly what it is you're looking for. We also have these saved searches, so I can find all my samples that are expiring in the next 7 days. So if I need to clean out my freezers, this is another great way to kind of get started. If you have any questions too, please feel free to chime in. This is kind of the very basics of it. We can go into our professional tier now and kind of just give an overview of that. We have our workflow jobs here. So this is going to be templates that I set up of step-by-step tasks that our lab needs to kind of focus on. If I go into my blood run that I have set up right now, we have different users assigned to specific tasks. Here I see all the steps we need to do to run these profiles of assays and then ship these samples out. These are set steps that I set up. I can also see all the information we may need to track with a specific workflow. So let's say all of these samples are being shipped out. I can see the courier company we have, as well as the tracking information. I can see what samples have been assigned to this specific workflow task, so I can make sure we're working on the correct samples. And then I can also go in here and see what assay information we have with this workflow as well, so we can make sure we're inputting everything that we need with a specific task. When users are assigned to our workflow, they'll also receive an email notification saying, hey, you have a job pending. This is what you'll need to be doing. We also have electronic lab notebooks. So these can follow templates as well to make sure we're entering in data the same way every time. One thing that really stands out with our ELN is that it connects directly to our samples, our assays, and our sources. So I can tag them very similar to social media where I do a @ and I can tag a specific sample I'm working on. So I can kind of reference it, open it in a new tab, get some more in-depth information on what's going on. With these ELNs, we can have inline pictures, charts, graphs. It's another way for me to just show off my cat because I think he's really cute and I want to brag about him. We have inline charts that we can have, as well as these tables to input some more data. These ELNs can also have electronic signatures. So if you need to get these approved by a supervisor, that's something they can do. And then you can download these as a PDF to share with anyone that may need it. So these are the very high level basics of Sample Manager. If you want to have some more in-depth demos of Sample Manager, maybe fit it more to what your use case is, I'm always happy to schedule another meeting. And you can always get some more information as well on our website. This is where you can go to our products, Sample Manager, and this is kind of where we have some tours, so you can look more into the system. And we also lay out our pricing about halfway down, just to make sure that it's in line with what you need. Sample Manager has $99 per user per month for our starter tier, and that's for 5 users. The more users you have, that pricing does go down. For our professional tier, it's $199 per user per month. And one thing we also do is we offer 30-day free trials to make sure that the system does work for you. And with those trials, we can import a portion of your data. So you're really getting the most out of that trial and really seeing how it may help with your laboratory. But right now, I'd love to open up the floor to any questions. Is there anything that you'd like me to kind of go see more in depth? I'm always kind of happy to help out and answer. Yeah, so one common question we have is how long does it take to implement the software? Typically, we say 4 to 6 weeks is how long it takes to get everything kind of input into your system. That includes historical data, as well as any training that users may need. Uh, at LabKey, we take a lot of pride in our customer support, so we make sure that we help you at every step of the way, ensuring that you're successful with the software because your success is really going to be our success. We want to make sure you get the most use out of that. And that's something that really sets us apart. Our customer support is included in the pricing. Are there any other kind of questions out there? More than happy to help answer anything. And if you have any questions too, always feel free to please email me, reach out. Looks like we got something. How configurable is it? Yeah, that's a great question. So pretty much everything that I showed you is configurable. All of these different sample types are, so you can have whichever sample type you want. And that's true for our sources and our assays. The data that you're inputting is also going to be configurable, so you can have as many different data fields as you want. And we also have a bunch of different sample type or data fields. So if you have dates, times, unique IDs like barcodes, that's something that we can help support. Um, and our freezers are also configurable to make sure you have the same layout. So this software is cloud-based. We host it through AWS. You have your own secure private cloud to make sure that you're really the only ones that really have access to that cloud. So that is a great question as well. Some of our other softwares can be on-prem, but just for sample managers on the cloud. New releases are released every month. Unless you're in validation, then it's in every 3 months. And with those are included new features. One new feature that we're having pretty soon that I'm really excited about is being able to customize the different status field colors. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun for users. You're using a different system. How easy is it to migrate over? That's a great question as well. So we help migrate all of your data over. We just ask that it's kind of in a computer format so we can get that imported into the system. And really, we help do the data cleanup for you. So if your data is kind of a mess, no worries. We're experts at getting that in there. We then import that data through an Excel spreadsheet, which is one of the ways you can also upload files if you're having electronic manifests. So we kind of import from a file for here through click and drag. And that's usually also what takes the 4 to 6 weeks of getting implemented. Other softwares will take months typically for that. This is standalone, right? Isn't it also integrated into LabKey Server SDMS? Yes. So certain levels of LabKey Server do also include Sample Manager, and that's also true with our biologic software. So if you're needing some more features that maybe Sample Manager doesn't cover, our other softwares will, but it'll also have a lot of the great features that Sample Manager has. So the cost of the software is dependent on the number of users you have. If you go to our website right here, we have the $99 per user per month. That's for 5 users. If you have more users, that pricing can go down at certain levels. And then our professional tier is $199 per user per month. And the difference is our professional has our workflow, assay data management, API access, in ELN, and our starter has the freezer management, sample registration, and our audit trails. All of that includes our customer support. Is it possible to integrate this with third-party software? Yep. We do support API. So if you can download your data or communicate your data in tabular format, we can connect with that API. Always happy to discuss more on what you're needing to integrate with. What is the advantage of having an ELN built into Sample Manager? Another great question. The main benefit is that your data is going to be connected to each other. So if we kind of go into that ELN, that's where we can reference our samples, our sources. And with that, this is where we can kind of double check our information. Maybe I look at blood 4733. Oh no, I'm referencing a sample incorrectly. I can double check that, get more information on what's going on, and kind of just link it exactly together And when I do reference these samples, it's also going to be on that samples page that it's a part of the CLN. So that kind of helps right there. Looks cool, but I don't see how my labs data could fit. How could I evaluate this? Yep, so we have a 30-day trial, so we can double check and make sure that the your data will work well with Sample Manager. We will want to make sure we're a good fit. We can also connect with another demo to make sure that I can kind of showcase how it would fit better with your specific use case. So always happy to chat. If you have any specific questions on what your data may look like, we can always evaluate from there. Great. All great questions. Are there any other questions that you may have? Always feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll reach out to folks attending and make sure that I can cover any other questions you may have. What is the name of my cat? His name is Frodo, Frodo Baggins, and then I have another cat named Pippin. So we kind of have a Lord of the Rings thing going on with our cats. He has 10 toes, though. He doesn't have a 9. So. Great, but I'll follow up with an email with some more information on how to get a trial started if you want to set up another demo. We kind of have some next steps laid out so we can I'll answer any other questions that you may have. Always happy to kind of connect more. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll send a recording out as well. So enjoy the rest of your day and hope to hear from all of you soon. Thanks.